Hello, and we're back with a topic for the ages, which is how do we make education relevant in this time of technology and vast options, etc., etc. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, education. Maybe I'll use my own example, like spend 20 years learning the subjects that most people learn in the world, like language, math, a bit of science, and then social science, history, etc., etc. I don't know, like I have like a love-hate relationship with my education. I think I learned a lot from it, and I definitely learned the ways of the world from my education. At the same time, I felt like all those memorization and information and data, I don't use the majority of this information now. What I had learned was basically interpersonal skills, communication skills, language skills that I could use. But I actually grew up in a Chinese society, so emphasis was placed on basically memorization rather than ability to work with each other. When I was growing up, like a huge part of my what is lacking in my education was like teamwork, collaboration, how to work on a project, carry a project out from beginning to end, how to be efficient, all these things. So I always thought that my education could be a lot better if it incorporated a lot of things that I could actually use in the real world. I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think you said something very interesting, that you were taught the ways of the world. And that's true. The ways of the world start from school. And what are we being taught in schools these days? We're being taught that there's competition everywhere and we have to beat others to get ahead. Very unhealthy. So I think how I believe we can make education relevant, or my problem with the education system nowadays, is first the subjects we're being taught, they're tailored towards an industrialization era, and now we are moving ahead. We're in an information age. We need to change the subjects as well. And then the second thing is the way we're being taught. It is very flawed. We are just taught how to memorize information, right? But we're not taught how to use this information, apply it to our lives, which is what education is basically, to add value to your life. But I mean, look at us. What do you remember from school? I'm sure things that actually stuck with you, that add value to you even now. But the majority of it, do you even remember it?
Right. Exactly.
What do you think?
Well, unfortunately, I have a memory like an elephant, so I remember all sorts of irrelevant and revolting things. I wish I could forget.
That's a great thing.
No, it's like extraneous stuff. But for me, the most critical point, which actually taps into what you said about things that we can take on and develop and things like that. And the key in that is really choice and interest. Because, so I personally don't believe education is an absolute must. Learning is.
Absolutely.
Education optional.
Every
It's like
age, learning.
Yes.
I'm with Mark Twain. He never let his schooling interfere with his education. So I look at education in the broad sense as learning life skills, learning things. So things like apprenticeship is a brilliant education, as is the days of old.
Definitely.
And so how to make it relevant, I think a very simple way is, one, to allow people to find their level, to find their interests, and learn what they want to learn. I think the whole thing about going straight from school to college in itself is flawed, because I mean, there are people who are learning to be, say, lawyers or doctors, or just because, and then they find it's a bad fit.
Yeah.
And then they're miserable.
Imagine the waste of time, money, energy, mentally, physically. What a shame.
Yes.
Imagine the things they could have done if they had followed what
Exactly.
truly interested them. But we're not, I'm sorry, I cut you off, but we're just not encouraged to figure that out. You're right.
Right.
Yes. And so, how to make it relevant? I would say, in the first place, to give people the tools to recognize that. I mean,
Yes.
this
Very
learning
true.
by rote doesn't. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like the cruelest cut of all. Kids are made to learn by rote, and then they get slammed for not having creativity or not thinking for themselves. But
Yes.
but the educational system itself
Oh, yeah.
creates that environment
Right.
where you should not think for yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I opted out of college. Everyone was utterly shocked, but it just was not right for me. But there are not many kids who would do that
Yes.
because the system
Yeah, that's the way society is.
it
Correct.
makes a big
Yes.
barrier. It makes a
Yes.
huge barrier
Exactly.
to that.
Yes.
And sometimes even when when you're out of college and you're looking for a job, and you have to have a certain educational background, you have to have certain experiences, there's just not enough importance on skills, soft skills, creativity, and stuff like this. And that is what really matters when you actually start to work. You need to be a good leader. If you're in a leadership role, you need to have good communication. These things like figuring out a program that you're working on can be easily learned even on the job. In fact, even better on the job. But all of these things take years of learning, the soft skills, I mean, and they're given no importance, and it's ridiculous.
Yes. Yes.
How are these things not given any importance?
Right. I feel like one of my main kind of like objection to the education system that we have right now, it's basically like whatever I learned there and whatever I do now, like the way of learning and the way I learn now, it's actually very different.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so right now I learn by working on a project, collaborating with different people,
Yes.
understanding different perspectives. Why can't we bring that kind of that's how we work anyway?
Exactly.
Bring it to the education and work. We can still learn about history and science and stuff like
Yes.
that, but it could be done
Such
in
a good point,
yes,
Cosmo.
like a task or a project collaboratively and
I know, right?
collaborative learning without the competition and saying, oh, you're better just because you
Absolutely.
memorize more or
Yes.
in time and things like that.
Absolutely.
Very good. And the addendum point to that, which I was going to say, and it was exactly following on. The reason you absorb it is because it has application.
Yes.
You can see this is helping me do this.
Exactly.
And funnily, when you say, do I remember anything from school? Actually, so I hated geography and history, any subject that I had to know what the text said.
Yeah.
Oh, because I just couldn't wing it, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, don't ask how I passed those subjects. I somehow did. But now I see geography as so interesting because
Yes.
you see the globe and you think, and then the cultures of that land, how their economies grew, and the history of it has relevance because I can see it, I can understand it, I have an appreciation for all these things. Were not given to me in school, right? It was just learn what was this battle. But so the other way to bring it into relevance is to show how it works in real life, to make it real. In
Yes,
fact, to make
very
every
true.
subject real.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, Penny, because, well, I'm a teacher, as you guys know, and when I teach things through play, when they're able to apply things, they learn and remember so much better. I mean, I think it's so simple. I think every teacher should do this. They should learn to apply things to, make it sort of like a game for kids so that they remember, they actually have fun learning. which is the point of learning, right?
Yes.
It is
And they see the use of it.
they see the use of it. They know how to apply it the way they would apply it in real life. For example, I read this actually I heard about this really interesting thing where this teacher was trying to teach his kids about real estate, and then he assigned some real estate things to his students,
Yes,
and then
yes, like
yeah,
Monopoly.
yeah, exactly, like Monopoly in the classroom. And then this, of course, they earn their money through, I don't know, grades.
Yeah.
You can
Yes.
you can systemize it any way you like, but then they get this idea because I remember when I got out of college, I was lost when it came to real estate and stuff like this. I wish I had been taught.
Yes.
But these kids are in high school and they're learning this in a very fun, applicable way. Imagine how helpful it would be, the hours it would save them, the stress and all of that once they have graduated. It's so simple. The solutions are so simple. It's just the way that we need to implement these solutions.
I think you bring on a very good point. It's like, what kind of subjects are more relevant these days, right? Not
Yeah.
just the way education is brought about. Like, I think a lot of people are saying financial, kind of like knowledge and
financial
maturity in financial
Yes.
intelligence. That's a great
Yeah.
term.
Yes.
It's a very important skill to have.
Agreed.
So it's like human relationships that people don't
Oh,
understand.
yes.
And like psychology,
Oh,
like
yes.
how our brains work, how emotions work, how do we communicate with each other to effectively like form a community or something like that. These are very important skills as well. So why are they not taught? You talked about how all the other functions like of your body work, but
Yeah.
not your brain. So it's really
Right,
absurd.
exactly. It is ridiculous.
Well, from the sound of it, it's actually the wrong things are being, because things like competition and like dog eat dog, and
And
there's
it's like
win
remembering
lose.
facts. Yeah.
Yeah, and win lose, and book learning or theoretical knowledge, and like you were saying, does it really help people live in the real world? I mean, how does
Yeah,
it
exactly.
equip them for life?
Yeah.
And hopefully that's the point of every educational
Yeah.
institution, right? Because why do you get a job? You get a job because you have to support your life, but your life is not your job. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
So the
you know-
tail is wagging the
Yeah,
dog
yeah.
all over the place.
Exactly, it is disconnected. When you say, why do you have to have a job to support yourself? A job, I think people should work or, to contribute to society. That brings so much joy when you look at it that way, when you find meaning in what you do. But the thing is, even in school, starting from school, you just have to do these things, you just have to suck it up because exam, essays, stuff like that. We're always taught that things have to be tough, that what I'm learning doesn't apply to me. This
Yes.
is not a contribution in any
Yeah.
way to my life. Then when I graduate, go out into the real world, then what I do it to maintain whatever quality of life I want, and in the trade-off I give my time, energy, and that is acceptable. But that's not acceptable. That's not how it is supposed to be. People like to create and people like to contribute, and I think that is something we overlook and we don't
Yes,
encourage
definitely.
in our students, which we should.
Yeah. So you mentioned that our education is really based on an industrial kind of like economy and society, and it's very, very true. Like in the last century, we needed people who could work in a factory or could work in an office to process information or kind of like, make commerce and trade possible. But our world has changed yet again. Like in the future, a lot of these things could be
Exactly.
done by robots and automated.
Right.
So our role is actually, a lot of people are arguing that it should the next wave of workers should be a creative workers or maker workers.
Yeah.
Like you create something, you solve
Yes,
problems,
very
or
true.
you make something. You build something.
Yes.
So two of the very fundamental skills that a lot of people are proposing for like children basically are programming. Programming, you can make and shape the world with code. And the other one is what we call design thinking. It's basically designing things, solving problems using creative way thinking. And
That's very interesting.
so when robot can do our manual works, works on memorizing data and facts and automating like physical work. What are the things that are left for us? Basically, it's just to program our surroundings and then solve problems creatively. But those skills are not really being taught in school.
But however, if you reverse engineer those skills, there's a number of actual nuts and bolts skills that need to be learned to compile those skills. So actually, as you were talking, I was just thinking, like a calculator, right? People can use a calculator but do they know what actually they need to calculate? Like, do they know if I need to get this number, I have to multiply this by this, or I have to divide this by this? So those kind of analytical parsing skills need to be learned. And funnily enough, that's the thing that's being missed out. I saw something called new math. Have you seen this new math thing?
No, I haven't.
Holy
Do
cow.
tell.
I can't tell. I looked at it and I thought, and I'm good at math. I looked at it and I thought, wow, if I was learning math now, I would fail. Like,
Is it that bad?
it's some convoluted thing where you have to draw lines and you cross off lines. Like, long division was...
I've seen a video of that. But it actually, supposedly it's a shortcut helping you. Maybe it's not the way we...
It's a shortcut that takes a longer time, if you call it.
I don't know. But interesting you're talking about math. Like, I heard that there are new ways of teaching math using visuals. So instead of like just numbers, you actually visualize it. It could be a sphere, it could be a shape or something like that. You try to calculate it through visualizing the math in a three-dimensional
That
format.
would have helped me so much.
And it's supposedly it helps the students because it makes a very abstract concept more visual. But I don't know the implementation.
I think
of that.
it also depends on people's learning styles.
Yes,
Some people
Exactly.
are-
Absolutely.
Good point.
Yes, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, some people are more visual, some people are more conceptual.
Yeah.
Because for me, I think something like your tables, right? 3 times 3 is 9. That's something that's worthwhile to know.
Yeah.
Just know it. Then you just do it.
Yeah.
So some things are worthwhile to know by rote.
Yeah.
And again, this is that whole diffused thing, right? Where people just throw out the baby with the bathwater or encapsulate the baby with...
Yeah.
Where I think for anything to be relevant, we really have to parse it out and like think critically. What is absolutely necessary? What is the minimum?
Right.
And what is the baseline?
Okay.
And then once you have that baseline where, that's the lowest common denominator,
Right.
everyone should know a certain level
Yeah.
of skills, that's it.
But Penny, don't you think it differs from country to country? Because some countries are, for example, look at us, we have cell phones, computers, fairly advanced technology. And then there are countries that are just learning to implement agricultural technology and stuff like that. So I think we have to keep that in mind.
So my baseline would be very low actually.
Yeah.
It'd be like, learn 1 + 1 is 2. And believe me, there are some people who struggle with that, right?
I think what you're saying are not like mutually exclusive. I think there are a set of skills that are fundamentals, probably a little bit universal. I think that those would include critical thinking and
only soft
intercommunication
skills.
skills, that all the soft skills that you
Right.
mentioned, knowing about yourself emotionally and personal strength, where it comes from. In Nepal, actually volunteer in Nepal last year, they actually taught it's through the religion, but it's actually the religion is more about being aware of your own self and learning how to be happy. And
That's a great thing.
yes, so it's very important. And like basic things like programming, because you can use programming in a lot of ways, apply it in any field, and creative thinking and things like that. I think that those are like financial skills that you talked about and things like that. they could be like the fundamental, like basic skill sets that everybody should learn to be a global citizen.
Yeah.
And on top of it, that it would be like subject-based, maybe the things like agriculture and things like
Exactly.
that.
You know, we can have a base of these soft skills and then somehow combine it with these subjects. Oh, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
My
you know,
dream school.
Yes.
ooh, actually, if people had that base of skill and consciousness, actually right there, they have the tools then to decide what further do they want to learn.
Yes.
And
Oh,
that would
yes.
be brilliant.
And
True.
then they can actually embark on things that they really like and want to create.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they could do it earlier in their lives too. Like, it's so rigid that we have to spend 18 years learning about general things. Why?
Oh,
And then
It's
suddenly we're like,
annoying.
we just have to make a decision about what do we
Suddenly,
know why?
right? I mean,
What do we
nobody
know
has
why we
ever-
want to be there?
And nobody's ever, I'm sure our parents to certain degrees have encouraged us to make decisions for ourselves, but society in general always tells kids, no, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, let me decide what you should do. And then suddenly one day you decide what you want to do with your life. How? How do you
How do you
imagine?
figure that out?
Well,
Yes.
So this is the whole thing, right? I don't know. I'm not very familiar with the educational sphere, but what I hear is kids are actually placed according to their grades.
Oh
like
yeah,
if
in
you are-
high school, yes, they are.
So you got such and such, so you do this.
Yes.
I mean,
to some extent, but then you still have some choices in college.
Within
It's
that.
like within
Actually, it used to happen.
but what if you absolutely don't want to do that?
Yeah, it used to happen
Exactly.
in my high
Happened
school.
to me. Yeah.
Yes.
What you just mentioned, the smarter kids would be put into this class, and the not very bright kids would be in another class. Not necessarily not very bright. Maybe they're just good at different things.
Yeah.
But that's how we were just like sort of put into these classes, you know. And then the naughty class, as they would call it, would be just, you know, doing their thing, and nobody paid attention to their education too much because sort of they were considered sort of like a lost
Losers.
case. And then it's just so unfair because if we could
It's
have,
very
if they
unfair.
could have let us mix together, then I
Yes.
guess the other students would have also learned more, and you know, it rubs off on you. Suppose
Yeah.
you really want to learn something and you're so passionate about it, it rubs off on your friends and they learn about this
Very
thing too.
true.
But we just don't think in these terms. We just want the good to just advance
Yes.
further, and who cares about
Yeah, and I
others?
think that's the fault
That
of
is
the
horrible.
way the world works is like nothing succeeds like success, right? So if an educational institution is churning out, you know, star students, they get kudos, and so the system is just a self-perpetuating
Yeah.
thing of
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
Like, you deem somebody who's not gonna succeed, and of course you're not supporting them. They're
You're
not
not
gonna
supporting
succeed.
them, exactly.
yes, and you're
It's
not
so
supporting
horrible
them.
when a school is doing this.
Yes, and they're not supporting them because it reflects on them if they use resources. So they'd rather
Yeah,
shepherd those
Yeah.
resources to. I mean, it is toxic.
it's
I-
toxic.
I actually think that this has like a pretty kind of like bad effect on society, detrimental effect on society, because this kind of system favors people who can memorize things and who can actually sit down and be calm
Yes.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Not everybody works like that.
No.
And actually, not to be sexually like discriminating, but that this favors girls versus boys.
Yeah,
Because
that's true.
girls get mature earlier than boys, and they are more easy. It's more easy for them to sit down and memorize information. Where relatively boys, they're more active, and they're late bloomers. So this is actually creating this problem. As in England, they're talking about this lost kind of group of people. They're like male students, predominantly white. They're being left behind because of their female counterparts are getting into college. And it's actually happening to all the big cities in the world. More girls are getting into college than boys because we're more attuned to those examination
I
systems.
can see that in my class too. I
Yeah.
do think girls pay more attention than
Yeah,
boys
it's just
do.
the way we develop. and then you're creating this almost or a phenomenon where like you have college education girls, but like less than college educated boys. So they and then it gets into the other problem where like college educated girls don't want to marry, like marry down or something like that. This traditional notion. So it creates like a societal problem as a whole. But
wow, that's interesting.
That is so interesting.
But like it comes from the way that we think about system. We favor people who can memorize things.
This is a bit off topic, but how feminism, we want equality, but sometimes we're just we're pushing girls a bit further and just forgetting about the guys.
Yeah,
sometimes we tend to do that, and I guess it's a bit understandable considering girls have had it tougher than guys in the past, but I don't think that's any excuse to be doing these kind of things.
Yes, I think guys or boys need other types of attention.
Yes, I agree.
Maybe they need more classes with more activities.
Right,
or different learning styles.
Different learning styles.
Yes, absolutely.
What I find very interesting is how a single system spawns all sorts of consequences, and the longer that system runs, the further the ripples go, right? I mean, that applies to every single system, but education particularly, I think, because that's the bedrock currently of how we are all raised. I mean, we all go through school and we all somehow go through college, unless we can wriggle out of it. And I don't think that the system deliberately sets out to make that divide, but just from the way it's set up, which is why we are all doing this, because we feel very strongly that unconscious systems give rise to this kind of thing, give rise to schisms, and I don't think that educational systems are maliciously meant, but in fact
they have a very good intent
behind it.
But in fact, the end results are malicious or malignant, I would say.
Turning to be because of how our values, our intentions are, slowly going away from what the original intention was, to provide equal opportunities for everyone. If your parents can't educate you, don't have the knowledge, then someone else will. It comes from a very good intention, but we are forgetting that, and we are just so rigidly following these subjects and these things that we have to learn.
Okay, so now is a good time to go back to basics. How do we make education relevant?
How do we make education relevant? Well, I think there are certain steps we have to take. We have to start by, like you said, looking at what is needed. And I think in that area, we must not forget soft skills. We have to learn to implement these in all kinds of subjects. And second thing, I do think we need to add subjects that are a bit more related to how our lives are these days, and even the way we teach kids. For example, we don't necessarily have to teach them to use the computer, but we can implement it into their learning. They can do math online, or all of these things. We can be really creative with how we teach our kids.
Good point. I think my proposal is along the lines of what you're saying. I think it would be great if we had new schools where a bunch of parents that are kind of like progressive or adventurous enough to place their kids there and experiment with learning the soft skills we talked about as a foundation, a bedrock, and then additional skills over time, and actually bringing in special interests and different interest topics earlier on in their education, so kids could actually know what they are about and make their choices earlier. You don't have to be at a loss before they get to college. It's like suddenly they have to make a decision, and hopefully that's successful enough. And then the kids would succeed, that other parents would see it and see the value of it and follow suit as well.
For sure.
Yes, show by example.
By example.
Yeah, and I think also to bring it slightly further back and take a long view, when people are hiring and employers and basically out in the world, if we start demanding more from the educational institutions, rather than cribbing about the graduates that come out,
Yes.
look at the source. You know, I mean, everyone slams the people coming out of these,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
look at the system that formed them.
That is true.
And so then that's also us as individuals, right? So because we are students and now we are employees and then we are employers.
Yeah.
So not continue that ingrained thinking,
Exactly.
which is what is obviously happening because nothing's changing,
Yeah.
right? But to do grassroots level in the institutions, but also from outside, create the environment that can compel,
Demand.
Yes.
a change.
Good.
So
Great. That's
yeah,
Nice.
perfect.
are we all summed up?
Oh yes. Yes, we are.
All right. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Hi, my name is Cosmo, and I'm a user experience designer. I like to use design thinking to promote social good, and I think conversations like this is a great way to start rethinking our world. That's why I'm doing this.
Hello, my name is Gazala. I'm a big believer in providing people with the right tools to expand their perspective. I'm doing this to bring awareness to us collectively.
Hi, my name is Penny, and I really think the conversations that we have with each other in this world could do with a major upgrade. So that's the reason I'm doing this.